Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, October 14th, 2024, and this is episode 961 of Living Free in Tennessee. It's a Monday show, so we'll have all of our usual segments. We're kind of back to our normal schedule this week after the Self Reliance Festival, and I'm going to talk about running a small business, a homestead, doing community building, as well as how that means sometimes you just got to do the work. We're going to talk about that phase of business development as the main topic of today's show. Before we jump into that, though, I wanted to talk about our featured event, which is Partner with Trees on the Permaculture Homestead, which is a class that Carrie Brown from Strong Roots Resources is going to do here on November 2nd, assuming enough of you sign up. So we threw it out just to see if people are interested, but here's how this came to be. He was talking about how all the courses are about like, you plant trees. Here's how you trim the roots. You get the trees in the ground. Here's some stuff about plant guilds with tactical. And he's like, nobody talks about the different functions the trees can have on your homestead, whether it be giving shade, fodder for your animals, erosion control, changing a microclimate, like all of the different ways you can use trees on your homestead for different purposes. And sometimes you can use them for multiple purposes. And then related to that, which trees do you choose? How do you source the ones that'll do best in your area? How do you assess your home or your homestead even for where you'd want trees, what kind of trees you want, what kind of functions you want them to perform? And as he got into it, I realized that we haven't done a class like that. We've totally done a food forest class, but what would it be like to have a class where we learn about partnering with trees on your permaculture homestead? So this class is actually mostly in the classroom. The point is to equip you to be able to do your own site scan of your homestead and come up with your plan from there. We'll be doing it here at the Holler Homestead on November 2nd. And then when class is over, we're going to go plant some trees, and you don't have to help us. This is not like, hey, how do we get people to pay to come do labor at Nicole Sauce's homestead? No, we're going to go plant some trees. We don't have a lot of trees to plant. I think it's 6 or 8 trees that we're putting in because we have changed our tree strategy here and taken out a bunch of trees. And now we want to put in different kinds of trees so we have the right trees for the purpose that we're putting the trees in for, right? Because we've added fodder trees, we've added fruit trees. It's, all of those things. So that class is going to be really cool. It's November 2nd. The ticket is $90 so that we can pay Carrie as well as feed y'all lunch. That's over at livingfreeintennessee.com. It's like the first thing at the top takes you to the product. If you want to sign up, starts about 10 in the morning. We should wrap by 3:30. And then if you want to hang out, watch us, or help us plant trees, you're totally welcome to do that. But I wanted people to be able to get here after doing their morning chores with their animals and also be able to go home and do their evening chores with their animals. And it's not a big blowout thing like we usually do in the spring, which is a totally different topic for a totally different show. That's our featured event of today's show. I want to also thank 2 sponsors today. The first sponsor is fresh on my mind because the swim spa is in. We're getting power hooked up to it tomorrow. And at the same time, you know what I'm installing? An EMP shield. You know why I'm installing that? Because if lightning strikes the lines, and that surge goes down the lines, and then it like blows up my swim spa through an EMP shield, there's $25,000 of insurance to replace the swim spa if it fails. But better than that, they don't fail. That's why they're so confident about that warranty. So I don't know that I've ever heard they've had to do the warranty. If you buy one and it gets fried by lightning, it works. I believe you can just replace it for $50, which is kind of cool. Anyway, you can find out more about the EMP Shield device at empshield.com. Use the coupon code LFTN for Living Free in Tennessee to get $50 off. Our second sponsor of today's show is Discount Mylar Bags. They are, just like their name says, they pass on savings to you by sourcing things in bulk to be able to help you store your food appropriately for long term and for short term. What's really cool about discountmylarbags.com, though, is that the owner of the company's put a lot of thought into how and what to store things in. And on the right-hand side of the website, you'll have some articles he's written about how to size your bags, what O2 absorbers to use, that sort of thing. So check that out at discountmylarbags.com. And if you are a member, there is also a discount code for you. with that, we're going to get into the live stream schedule for this week. Tomorrow at 9:30, I will be live with Jessica Hinton, who is texting me right now about what time we're meeting this afternoon. And I need to tell her I can't be there before 4:30. Anyway, so Jessica has been spearheading all of the efforts that the LFTN and wider communities that we're in have been doing in Roan Mountain, Tennessee and East Tennessee to get people supplies, help them take trees out, help them. There's one lady who doesn't have any subfloor at all that needs to get subfloor installed because it was all washed away. So she has like 9 square feet of subfloor and is walking on beams to get from the bedroom to her kitchen, for example, stuff like that, because it's crazy what happened over there. We will talk about that and more tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning on our Tuesday coffee show. Thursday at 6 p.m., we have the third in the 3-part series of the Great American Preparedness Tour, which is the three preparedness festivals that work together. That'll be at 6 p.m. on Thursday. And then finally, Friday at 9:30, we will have our Homestead Happenings update. So that's all the live for the week this week. I have been asked to be on a show about just getting ready or being prepared that's in response to the ports shutting down and people not being sure what to buy. I expect to have that with the lady who coordinates the Next Steps conference, which is a really cool conference if you haven't checked it out. Anyway, we're working on a date and time for that. I think that's going to be more like next week or the week after. She's doing a whole series of preparedness for her audience because they come at freedom from the health freedom standpoint. And then what naturally happens is you start growing your own food and you get into homesteading. And then next thing you know, you're like, wow, how do I manage all this stuff? And what stuff do I actually need to have on hand? So I will keep you guys posted. And the best way to get in tune with, you know, where we're going to be or what we're going to do is subscribe to the Monday Mail. So I send an email every Monday. It recaps what shows we did last week, so you can download the audio if you want to. Highlights things. I usually say some stuff about what's going on. I talked a lot this week about the hurricane relief efforts. For example, we have a recipe of the week. I will be reformatting those a little bit because it's gotten very long, and I'm not sure the long part of it is helping us read it like a newsletter, which is what it is. It's a weekly newsletter. So that's over at livingfreeintennessee.com. If you haven't signed up, definitely get signed up for that. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show, Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about storing what you use and using what you store. And this is something that I just developed the skill over time because I live way out in the middle of nowhere and it's not super easy to go to the store. So as you develop your homestead, you'll find yourself more in tune with the seasonality of what's available. And also, Rachel says, don't forget to kick the like to get the algorithm in gear. Thanks, Rachel. Anyway, you get more in touch with the seasonality of the food on your homestead and when things are in season. Like I really look forward to strawberry season, which is a short period of time where we get strawberries. And they get just like straight off the plant into my mouth, basically. So that happens with a variety of different things here. Some things have a longer season than other. I love tomato season, and tomato season is coming to an end. So we're probably getting our first frost tomorrow night, although it could frost tonight. What that means is that I have taken all of the green tomatoes off of the vine that were worth keeping. And I'll be cutting the vines out of the tomato wall because it's no longer necessary to shade my house from the southern sun. In fact, sun hitting the south side of my house now means that I get heat from that, which I don't want in the summer, but I certainly want in the fall and winter, right? So those are inside on the counter. And here's how the tomato process works is some of them were starting to turn, and those have already gotten ripe on the counter and gone into a salad last night. And then there are some that are kind of orange that I pulled out of the green ones. And in the next couple days, those will go into a salad. So I let them sit on the counter and ripen for the next 2 to 4 weeks. And then the ones that are just clearly not ever going to turn or get ripe, they go into a fried green tomato dinner or two. And then we're done with fresh tomatoes for the year. But I do have more tomatoes in the freezer that were ripe all at once this summer, and I just threw them in the freezer because y'all know I was traveling a lot. And Now it's time to take those out and make tomato sauce and stewed tomatoes and can them. So I have a bunch of tomato things canned. I have salsas, I have sauces, and this will be the last round of that. The nice thing about being able to wait till now is that it like heats the house a little bit while also making preserving them so they don't have to be in the freezer taking up space. And I like that because my house is pretty well insulated. And so right now we're at this in between season where it's going to get cold at night a little bit. So the house is too cold for me to be here in a t-shirt. But I'm here in a t-shirt because my body temperature like kicks up when I'm speaking, right? So I run hot when I'm speaking. And so usually but if I put a jacket on for the show, then halfway through the show I have to take it off. So I was just like, I'll just be cold for the first half and then the right temperature for the second half. Well, what happens in the house if I have a fire, because I heat with wood, is that it gets warm and then it's too warm. So we're at this weird season where if I cook in the oven at night or I cook, on the stovetop, it's usually enough to take sort of that chill off the air. And then we go to bed and you're under blankets at night. And then in the morning, it's like you put a sweater on. And then by midday, the sun has heated the house again. So having tomatoes to can in the middle of that just means we have an extra day or two of pumping the heat into the air, which just means I don't have to have a wood fire. Although I look forward to the first wood fire every year. I have a feeling that will either be tonight, but maybe not tonight because it's a choir night, or tomorrow night. So we're getting ready to move the firewood up here. I'm going to take the tomatoes down. And this is all related to the pantry because of tomatoes. We've also done the last harvest of all the herbs today. If the frost doesn't hit tonight, then I have a second round of mint tea to harvest, but it's that time where everything gets wiped out because it gets cold, and then we're on to cold weather crops outside. I am doing my pre-winter buy, which means paper goods and things that I know I'll need for the winter. And there are some challenges this year because the ports closed down like, I don't know, 2, 3 weeks ago. And then everybody bought toilet paper. And in fact, I am at that time when I'm supposed to buy a cube of toilet paper. But if the one I want isn't there, I'm just gonna wait till it's back in stock. And if I get to the point where we're actually low on toilet paper, then I'm gonna worry about it. But I usually just do it on a cycle. But the cycle has been disrupted for two reasons: one, the ports, and two, people are buying things here and sending them to East Tennessee for the people who need them more than we do. Neither of these things am I panicked about or do I feel bad about. Why? Because my pantry has what I need in it. Right. So I can send things from my pantry to help people because we keep that cushion, that savings account of supplies, so that when we run into a situation like this and there's like not necessarily stuff available, we still have enough stuff in our pantry that we can go another few months and not even worry about it. So that's the report from the prepper pantry. I would usually do a weekly shopping report here, but MeWe has changed their policies and I can't get into my account now. And I knew it was coming and I knew it eventually happened. And so I haven't seen Joe's report on MeWe. I'm going to suspect that Joe is also closed out of MeWe. I did go over to Discord today and ask if Joe had put his shopping report there because I didn't see one easy to find. So hopefully we'll get a process where that's being posted on Discord. And if you are looking for a new community location for Living Free in Tennessee, they did set up a Discord. A lot of the MeWe people went there. A lot of them are talking over on our Telegram group, which is t.me/LFTN group. So that's the other place you can connect with Living Free in Tennessee folks. And then we do have a Facebook group, although that group hasn't been active. Like, it's kind of active. There's not a lot of posts there. The only way that group works is if you make it active by going there and talking to each other, because that's the purpose of a group. And I kind of walked away from Facebook about 4 years ago and really put a lot of investment into MeWe. And now that MeWe has updated to a new technology that a lot of our people are not upgrading to, it's good that we also set up Telegram and that we also set up Discord, because there are multiple ways to talk. But I'm also not opposed to, if y'all start talking on the Facebook group, I will go there till I get kicked off. And we all know I'm getting kicked off. I'm also out of frugality tips. So frugality tips are just tips that listeners send in about ways that they're optimizing their budget. And Margot sends a lot of them in. And I've gone through all of hers. And so if anybody has frugality tips, send them to Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com, or go to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on contact, fill out the form, and those emails come to me. Okay. Last segment before the main topic of today's show. Look at me getting through all the early segments in 15 minutes. Wah, wah. Operation Independence. This is where we talk about building local ongoing revenue into our lives here, as well as avoiding the need to pay a guy. Now, this has been a long project. I first started by knowing I wanted a swim spa. And I had to figure out how to monetize it because I thought, like, I don't want to make this large purchase for something that's not going to pay back in more ways than just being a swim spa. That's fun. So I went on an adventure for a year and I was like, okay, I go to the pool regularly. That means I earn the right to have a swim spa. And then a lot of things happened this year, and a lot of things that happened kept me out of the pool. A big one is that the way that Tennessee's weather went was if there were thunderstorms on storms on Sundays. Sundays are the only day I can go to the pool. If there are thunderstorms near the pool closes because they don't want lightning hitting the water and frying the people in the water like little people soups, right? So it's like it's a valid thing. They don't want that. And I don't want to be in the pool and get zapped. So I ended up missing a lot of swimming days, and I started just going this summer open swimming in the lake instead because it was close. And that meant on like a Wednesday afternoon when everything was wrapped up and before cooking dinner, I could go for a quick swim in the lake and then come back out. And if you've seen the Sauce Swims videos, that's what those are all about. Well, I was also in a major car accident and it totaled my car and did not hurt me. And that was pretty darn amazing. But as a result of that, I need to buy another car. And we're at this time in the used car world where I bought a car. I went halvesies with a backup car. So Tactical has his car, and then he and I went halvesies on a truck that we can both use. So if one of our cars is broken, and what I haven't done yet is bought my car for me. And what I've been looking at is that used cars that are on the newer side, when I factor in if I'm financing it, what the finance rate is, are as expensive or more expensive than a brand new car. And I know which car, one of two cars I want, right? Uh, so I've been kind of keeping an eye on that market, and I've made the emotional slash logical decision about how much money I'm willing to spend on the car. And part of that meant I was going to have to finance the car. So then I started thinking about everything we've been talking about this year, like honing our focus and the importance of prioritizing your health every day by making the right decisions every day rather than trying to, make up for it once a week by working out at the pool, for example. And I read the book Outlive early this year, and like exercise is a big piece of what you need to do when you're my age so that when you're older than my age, you have more mobility in your older age. And there's different kinds of exercise, but one of the things that would be really nice would be swimming for me. Rucking is also great. Lifting things that are heavy help keep bone density. It's all of that stuff. And I realized that I was willing to spend roughly twice what a swim spa costs on my vehicle, which gets me from point A to point B. And then I reassessed my priorities and I decided I was willing to buy the swim spa and that the car could wait. So the swim spa, you guys have seen me, like I learned how to pour concrete from Jason Sparks and we got the slab in and the swim spa came and the holler neighbors came down because the guys who were installing it didn't have enough oomph to push it off the trailer because it's heavy. So like all of us oomphed it off the trailer and it's in place and square to the slab. And it hasn't had power for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or however long it's been here. It's been here 3 weeks, no power because you had to get the spa in place before the electrician could run the wiring and hook it up. Tomorrow, it gets hooked up. Tomorrow, I fill it with water. Tomorrow, I take my water down to the place where I bought it and we analyze the water and we get the starter chemicals going and all of that. And hopefully later this week, it's actually something we can use. Well, here's where the monetization part comes in, right? Because I bought this swim spa as an amenity for my hip camp rental. And I will be selling membership access to it and I personally will buy a membership from the company. But I'm also going to list it on Swimply, which is like an Airbnb for pools. So it'll be up there where people can just rent it, Swimply for an hour or two if they want to. And that's all part of Operation Independence. It's like I now have the thing. I might as well make some money on the thing while it's here. So that's what's happening with that. And then the second thing is that base camp is going to be available for rent soon. I think it'll be around December 1st. There's not an official date, but I expect that's probably the timeline unless something else happens. And what will happen there is it will be available as a vacation rental, or we find somebody from the community who wants to rent the house, or I decide to rent it to somebody here local. But I think I can do better as a vacation rental than as an ongoing locally focused rental, only because of the trashing it factor. So my experience with Airbnb and VRBO is that your place doesn't get trashed as much. Like things go wrong, but you don't usually have somebody in there not pay rent for a long time and start breaking windows and pulling wire out of walls, for example, which has happened to me in a different rental. And so I've controlled for a lot of that by being very careful with how we screen people. But I know that last time I put this out, there was a community member who ended up needing a temporary rental while they changed their life plan. And they're the ones moving out. They've been great neighbors. So I'm throwing it out to the community that it will be for rent. And if you're interested, definitely let me know. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. So it's not a huge place. But there is a chicken coop on site if you have chickens. And it's a nice setting. It's a very nice setting. So you can reach me, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. And it is part of my Operation Independence because we have control of these houses near me for rentals so that we don't have the blowback for when the wrong kind of renters are in there. Because we've had a few, like over the 17 years I've been here, there have been 3 or 4 times where somebody lived nearby where it was not a good scene. It was a drug scene. And we'd like to be careful about that here. Anyway, it's time for the main topic of today's shows. Guys, if you have questions or comments you want to build into this, I see that Debbie's here, Rachel, Haas. I don't see anybody else in, but I know that there are more of you. You're just not commenting. You can get your questions in by writing the word question in all caps and then writing your question, and I'll do my best to build it in. I'm going to say a bad word. So if you don't want to hear bad words, you might not want to hear the rest of the show, but it's not the F word. Murphy's a bitch. Murphy is a bitch. Hi, Kevin. Murphy likes to visit me right after the Self-Reliance Festival and other busy times because Murphy is a bitch. And when you say something like, oh, good, that went so well, that's when Murphy comes over. And Murphy came to visit last week here in the holler. Murphy was here. Or was he? The funny thing about Murphy is that we blame Murphy for things going wrong, but whose fault is it usually when things go wrong? Is it Murphy or is it you? Is it me who actually created the environment in which Murphy could come rear Murphy's big beautiful head? So last week after the Self-Reliance Festival, like got home Monday because I always stay till the next morning to look around and see if some stuff's been left somewhere weird or whatever. And then Kiri stayed even longer and triple checked all that. And because we had to load out, but we got back Monday afternoon, late afternoon. And I came home to Black Friday scale roasting schedule because I had pre-roasted all my orders before I left that were subscription and sent them, with the exception of one person who's like, I don't need it right away, so whatever. So there's a lot of roasting to do. And both my roasters broke the day I got back and started wanting to use them. I didn't tell you guys this last week. Yeah. Both my roasters were out of commission at one time. And, like the 2 is 1, 1 is none. Apparently I needed 3 is for me last week. And with tons of orders in, that caused me to feel a little stressed. I was glad I had at least pre-roasted and shipped those subscriptions because that wasn't a problem. I must have composted 50 pounds of beans from failed roasts in that first day back, which is about $1,000 of product lost in my compost bin. So if you eat vegetables at any of my workshops, guess what? That's some high-end compost I'm using right there. Hey, Spags. Hey, Lee. Welcome. Dusty and Chelsea. Welcome. Yep. It was kind of a bummer. And sometimes that's how it goes, man. Things go wrong when you run a business. Things go wrong when you're on a homestead. Things go wrong in life, and you just got to do the work. And last week was totally a do the work week because it was not only the roasting catch up, but all of the post SRF stuff needs to be done. And there are hours in the day and you work those hours. And if things didn't go wrong, I think life would be a lot less interesting because you wouldn't have anything to compare it when it's, like when you're having like the time of your life and everything's like locked in and awesome. You remember the times when it wasn't, and you compare and contrast, and the worse those times were, it seems like the better the good times are. It's funny how life works that way. So today I just wanted to talk about what do the work really means, because I know Amanda Willis often says, like, do the work, and she'll be like, it's 10 o'clock at night, I'm making salves because this is when I can make salves, and I'm tired, so I'm doing it tired. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. So it doesn't matter if you have a small business, a homestead, both or neither. Sometimes it's just necessary to do the work, and doing the work is one of the best habits you can build. So if you do the work every day, then you avoid situations where Murphy comes to roost on your head the week after Self-Reliance Festival and both your roasters go down, right? You're more likely to not be in that situation, so to speak. It doesn't mean stuff never goes wrong. It just means that by doing the work every day, things are less likely to be behind or out of whack. And then that little thing that goes wrong can turn into a big thing if things are out of whack. So a friend of mine used to say, do hard things. And at the end of all of the workshops we do, he give out a sticker. It says, do hard things. Because if you don't do hard things now, you're going to have to do harder things later. And this is true for like personal health. If you don't go to the gym now, 10 years from now, you might have a heart condition that you could have avoided by going to the gym now, right? And that's the same thing as making those small choices every day makes a bigger difference than the biggest choice that you need to make. And it's true for your health. It's true for your business. It's true for your household. It's true for your relationships. No pressure, though. No pressure at all. And as the owner of a business, right, you see things that need to be addressed all the time when you're walking around. And oh yeah, Lee says, eat that frog, as the saying goes. Yeah, I have a frog I still need to eat today that I meant to eat earlier and then I got interrupted. So thanks for reminding me to eat the frog before I go to choir, Lee. I will totally do that. So you see things as the owner that other people don't see. And you'll see in advance, if I don't address that, it's gonna escalate, right? And then you have a decision to make. Do I do it myself or do I have somebody else do it for me? And that therein is a fun conundrum because we're talking about doing the work. So you would think I'd say just do it yourself all the time. Not necessarily. That's not necessarily the highest and best use of your time. But the thing is, when you do the thing, you do it right, or you keep trying to do it right until you get it right. And often when you hand things off to somebody, the person doesn't actually care as much about it being done right or as the outcome as you do. And they never will, and they shouldn't. It's not their business. When we find people who will do things as good or better than I do or up to that standard, I do my best to keep them around because that's awesome and really hard to find. So you need to know that when you're making your decision to have somebody else do it or to outsource it, that is this a thing that really I have to do? Like I need to send somebody an email right now that I could ask somebody else to send that somebody the email. And I'm sending that somebody the email because it needs to come from me. And if it gets messed up, that email, it's a sensitive email. If that email gets messed up, I want it to be my fault and not like, well, I asked Joe Blow employee to do it and Joe Blow employee messed it up and now it's Joe Blow employee's fault because you know what? It is not. That would be my fault too. So when you do it and do it right, that's great. And you need to know if you're going to have somebody else do the thing, they may not do it as well as you want them to or as you would. And sometimes that's not as big of a deal as others. John Willis told me once, I think over the summer I was out there, he was like, "I'm my most expensive employee." And he's like, "You're your most expensive employee, Nicole. Like, are you using your time right?" Was kind of where he was going with that. And he was right. It really got me to thinking hard about that. And it was a good question to be asked this year because I've been really wanting to hone where I put my effort. My word of the year is hone, to be able to, when I do the work pays off because you can work all day on things that don't matter and work really hard till exhaustion and you're no further ahead. And that's not what we mean when we say do the work, right? It's do the right work, so to speak. Not so to speak. It's do the right work. There's no so to speak there. I don't know why I said that. That was like a weird filler phrase for some reason. So, the question then comes up in the hollow roast business. Should I be slinging the beans, which means roasting? Should I be packing the boxes and putting the shipping labels on? Should I be focused on the marketing? I'm the most expensive employee. Which one of those tasks can be outsourced, right? Or should be outsourced? But the answer isn't that simple. So when John said this to me, I was trying really hard to hire some help with marketing and some other things so that I could focus more time on relationship developments with the people who've been key to my business and new relationship development for people who will be key to my business, product development to launch some new things and stuff like that. And every time I tried to hire somebody to do that or to outsource to somebody, it failed. It totally failed. Like big time failed. Like didn't deliver on promises, failed, right? And so like for 8 and so that went on for a while and then I realized what was happening. And then for 8 weeks after it failed, I had 6 days, 6 to 8 hours of work I got to do personally in addition to my normal work to recover from that situation to get things where they needed to be from the standpoint of what that project was I kept trying to outsource. Because it became clear that although I had decided to outsource that, it wasn't working to outsource it. And I had to do the work for us to reach the benchmark that needed to be reached. And so that was the work that had to be done. So I did it. That's, in addition to everything else. And this is not a show about, hey, I did all the work. No, because failure is not an option. I'm trying to give you a view of like what this looks like on the inside of the business. Failure is not an option when you're running a business. And so when a project fails, you learn, you adjust, and you move on and you do what you can to unfail it. Right? Sometimes things just fail and that's just the way it's going to be and whatever. But if you can do something to turn that into a success, to turn that around, it's up to you to do that. So when big fails happen and recovery is needed, guess who gets to do the work? It's about doing the work to get back up over that hill where you need to be that created through making the wrong decision or whatever you did for yourself and for your company. Because if you don't do this, then you go out of business. This is, I think, why businesses often don't make it 5 years because they're doing well, doing well, doing well. They have that fail, and then they don't do the work to recover from the fail to make it into a success. And then they find themselves in a financial situation that's no good. And then they go out of business. And then you're like, wow, I thought they were doing so well. And then suddenly they weren't. They didn't do the work. That doesn't mean every time they didn't do the work. And they were probably working very hard. They didn't do the work in the right places when they realized something was up. So back to my roasters and Murphy. It wasn't Murphy's fault, guys. It was my fault that my roasters were out of commission last week. I knew before Self Reliance Festival, I needed to pull apart the fan in my small roaster and with a toothbrush, scrub off any of the coffee chaff that had built up because a couple times a year I got to do that. And it was about time for that to happen. And it was starting to behave like maybe it was time to do that. And I was like, please just roast for one more week so I can get to Self Reliance Festival and back. And I'll do it when I get back. And I did. And I knew my big roaster was making a strange noise. And I had started hearing the noise about 6 weeks ago, and the blower was not blowing as strong. And I just thought that there was some chaff buildup somewhere else, but there was not. And I just, I was like, okay, guys, I'll be here for you. right after Self-Reliance Festival, and I just kept trucking through roasting. They were roasting fine. When I got back from Self-Reliance Festival, in particular, the big roaster acted like it was roasting, and I would end the roast, and it would be like beautiful dark beans, and then this layer at the very end of completely unroasted green beans would go plop right on top, meaning that I had 2 choices. 1, good bean, bad bean, good bean, bad. Talk about my most expensive employee, like, how many hours was that gonna take? That was not an option, but it was the option. Um, so I had to do some troubleshooting on that one to figure out why it was suddenly doing that. So I had the troubleshooting piece, and I had the little roaster needed to be deep scrubbed, and when I have the little roaster up and running, I can roast 2 pounds at a time. When I have the big roaster up, it's like 14 pounds at a time, so it scales of magnitude better, and then I had, like, this big roasting sheet, and I made a decision, and I decided that it was time to do the work, right? So right after my roasters told me they wanted some extra handling, in a week where I felt really tired because Self-Reliance Festival is, like, a lot of fun, but you end up like, attendees end up tired. I'll tell you guys, organizers end up tired too. In a week where I had extra emails to answer, supplies to stash and put away after having them all out at Camden, and communications to write to people, and steps to take to set up a successful 2025, plus a marketing campaign to launch for Hollow Roast Coffee, it was just time. It was time to do the work on the roasters. And putting off maintenance last week would have resulted in a much bigger problem, like the scale of catching a roaster on fire. So it was just time to do the hard thing last week. And it was do the hard thing last week so I don't have to do a harder thing in the middle of Christmas rush, which could have been worse. Like, and then waiting weeks for parts if parts went bad. Because right now, one part is bad, but all of the parts are not bad and they haven't been stressed, right? So, like, it was just time to do the work. And so I did. And here's what saved it for me last week is with all of those things swimming around and with the need to prioritize my personal health as well, because if I go down, nothing happens, right? What saved the day was my 3 things. So we talk about my 3 things and having your big picture goal and having, like, the benchmarks you need to make and choosing 3 do or die items. When all of that went down, what I did was the hardest thing. Like, doing the work at that moment meant stopping the work, stepping back, identifying what feeds what, which feeds what. So I did the most important things every day so that we were back on track in a week. And, this goes for, like, Tactical and I co-run the homestead. And he has his list of things he's going to do. And what's been on his mind the last week has all been about fencing and moving sheep. And it's like, I got to run this line of fencing. And if I don't get that done, I can't move the sheep. And there's pressure in that. Meanwhile, I needed to dig a ditch for the swim spa electrical to be put in. And I needed to know where the ditch would be. And he needed to tell me where the ditch was going to be. Okay. So one morning I'm like, listen, show me where the ditch is going to be. I'll mark it. And then I can start poking it, digging it in between things so that when the electrician comes, he's not digging the ditch because who wants to pay an electrician to dig a ditch, right? That's a lot of money. So he was like, I can't right now. It's like, and finally I was like, if you make this decision this morning, then you don't have to think about this ditch ever again. But if you don't, then I'm going to be asking you to dig the ditch in 3 days. So why don't you just take 5 minutes and do that? And he did. And that's an example of when stepping back makes a big difference. Like, what are all the things that need to be done? What are the important things? And are there any bottleneck items that make it so somebody else can do the work if you have somebody else to do the work, right? So the my 3 things method for me saved the day because I stepped back and I was like, okay, look at everything. Look at what bottlenecks, like, I'm in the way of because Mama Sauce is here that's keeping her from being able. She was reorganizing, like, all of the Self-Reliance Festival materials back into the event trailer so that that wouldn't have to be done right before the next festival, and we'd know what we have inventory-wise, and if we need to source anything next year, we know what that stuff is. So there were some things I had to look at there. And then as far as the roaster shack went, um, the big roaster has a part that's gonna take a week to get here. Now, I can overnight it for 500 extra dollars, or I can roast 2 pounds at a time until the part gets here. But I'll have really pissed off customers if that 2 pounds at a time doesn't get them their coffee. And so what I did was I looked at like what the expected load would be for coffee for the next week. And I determined that if I just keep that roaster going, which meant stopping and taking it apart and toothbrushing the fan out, right? And I just keep that going even at quote unquote times of day where I don't roast, because I have a schedule where I roast till noon and then I do other stuff, right? And then if there's a show that shifts a little bit, but there are times when I roast and times when I don't roast. And all I had to the only change I had to make was roast all the time. And then in between the roasts, I could do small segments of stuff like write show notes or whatever else. And once I'd identify that, then each day I could be like, this many orders out is one of my three things. Um, Getting something for my personal health done is two of my three things, because it's important to keep your health up during busy times as well, right? And then this thing for the hurricane effort is my third thing. So every day has been that way since all of this happened. And it's been a huge strength to be able to do the work and know that where I'm focusing my time is doing the best for me. Because we've got a videographer coming on Thursday to start putting together some of the videos around the holler roast, like Christmas offerings, and into the fall we're really pushing the coffee as we go into Christmas rush, because we've got some really cool gift offerings. But if I don't have customers because they're pissed off, then nobody's going to buy the gifts that they could send, right? So doing the work means identifying which work is most important to do too, because then you can put the hard effort there and have the payoff. And as you identify those bottlenecks, like things just open up. Like my neighbor came over with mom, and this is totally separate, but it was a bottleneck. And they um, sealed some shelves that I had made so that things can go on the shelves, so that things were no longer in the doorway in bins packed to go on the shelves. Like once that was done, the bottleneck was done. And it was like hours, 2 hours of work that they did, opening up a couple hours of work that I can do in between stuff. And that whole situation works again. And I can find things. And when you can find, and then the internet completely crashed and she came back. I was on a roll, man. I was on a roll. Anyway, so for those of you on the audio podcast, you're going to like hear this weird thing. And those of you who stayed with me on the stream, thanks for staying with me. I think, what was I talking about? I was talking about doing the work. I was talking about identifying which work is most important to do. So, once you've done that, the bottlenecks go away. And once those bottlenecks are out, then you have a better foundation for moving forward. And if you do the work every single day, then when problems happen, like last week for me, it's not a big deal, right? All I had to do was roast all the time. And, some orders took an extra day or two to get out. And I'm still on the 2 pound roast cycle because I'm waiting for the part to come. And when that part comes, then I will put together the other roaster, and then I'll be like back in business, like much larger scale roasting. So doing the work means identifying what's important to do. Using my three things as a business owner helps you determine which steps to take, but it only works if you just acknowledge that everything's your fault even when it isn't your fault. By which I mean, when things go wrong at Holler Roast or at Self Reliance Festival, and it's because somebody else did a thing, it's still my fault because I'm the one who put that person in the position where they did the thing. So, like, as things have gone wrong on and off throughout the year, and somebody's like, oh man, like this email went out with a typo and it was somebody else's fault that the typo was in there. All I've said to people is, that's my bad. I'm so sorry. Because it's my bad for not having double checked it, or it's my bad for a variety of reasons. Like a typo in an email isn't the end of the world. Margot has read a number of our emails and been the ones that you see that are typo free, they're typo free because she read them, to be completely frank. But when you're a business owner and you acknowledge that everything's your fault, whether it was directly your fault or not, that puts you in the mindset to focus less on the thing that went wrong or why it went wrong and blame part of that, and more on the what are we going to do to not do that again part. There was a point this summer where the AI videos started like just creating nonsense videos, and we put out a number of shorts that just didn't mean anything. And I was like, okay, we can't do that anymore because that's just hurting the brand to put that crap out, right? So it was my fault because I was depending too much on AI. And so we backed up, and then Margot started sending us like, I think this would make good shorts, and those shorts have made good shorts, and it's a much better quality thing. I can't do as many of those, in a week as we can generate instantly with the push of a button, but volume is not necessarily the answer when it comes to talking about your brand, if you know what I mean. So that's doing the work, right? So doing the work, what that was most important first, or eating the frog first, has been important. Doing the work to keep healthy and doing the work earlier rather than later, because then if something goes wrong, if you procrastinated, like you end up with a much bigger problem than if you do it soon. I'm also like, in order to get through last week, I was up in the roasting shack before work hours. That's just the way that works when you own a business. That's what we mean by doing the work. So if you're in a situation where you too feel like, man, everything's going wrong and I got to do the work, it's time to prioritize what the most important use of your time is and where you can put your time, and then go for it. It's okay to pack orders when you're tired. It's okay to keep pushing. It's okay to make time for those relationships in there too, though. So doing the work doesn't always mean doing the work. Sometimes it means doing the work with your relationships. Sometimes it means doing the work in your community. A week before Self Reliance Festival, when Helene dumped all the water in East Tennessee, the last thing I needed to do was start trying to get people to bring people aid in East Tennessee, according to the priority of my business, which was make Self Reliance Festival as best as it could be. But the most important work to do at that point was use the connections I had to start getting resources to people. So I stopped putting Self Reliance Festival together that weekend, and I focused in on the relief efforts. And then all y'all came out of the woodwork and just started doing it. And then by the time it was time for me to be on site, you all created the machine that's helping people over there, not me. I just asked the question and connected some of you. So that's what I mean by removing the bottleneck. The only bottleneck that was there was people wanted to do something, but they weren't quite sure what to do. And then we connected them with what to do. So it's okay to do the work. It's okay to do hard things now. And what it means to do the work isn't just work harder. It's also work smarter. With that, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. Our next member webinar will be in about 3 weeks, and it's about creating off-grid water on your homestead with Ryan Steva. It's going to be launched through our new system, LearnDash. And I was just playing with it right before the show, really liking it. So the Self Reliance Festival digital stuff is going to go on there too. I just uploaded the first video from that today. Very excited to make a better membership experience for all of you. Thanks for joining the live stream. With that, go out, do the work, and make it a great week.